cannot hinder me.
The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, the thought of betraying Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him complete power. He knew that he had come from God and was going to God. So he rose from the table, took off his outer garment, and tied a towel round his waist. Then he poured some water into a wash basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and dry them with the towel around his waist.
When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will." "No," Peter said. This Palm Sunday event, back around 29 AD, was a very special time for the disciples. It was the best of times. Jerusalem was teeming with people. Every devout Jewish man was fulfilling their spiritual responsibility to show up in Jerusalem for Passover. It was a high time. People were pressing their way from all around Palestine just to be in Jerusalem. Estimates are that the whole population of the city increased 300% because of all the travelers and pilgrims. There was excitement in the air, but there was something else going on. The Passover represented so much to everyone. It reminded them of how God had stepped into history and freed their people. The Passover, a wonderful time for every Jew to remember how they were once slaves and how God stepped into history and caused Pharaoh to let their people go. The Passover, a wonderful time to remember how God opened up the Red Sea and they walked through on dry land. The Passover was a wonderful time to remember that God did not forget them. And 40 years through the wilderness to finding the promised land. And now they are gathered in the land of promise, in the city of God, to honor and celebrate Passover. And the city was filled with devoted persons coming for that purpose. But yet there was something else going on. In a small corner of Jerusalem, there was another crowd that was in the crowd.
All right.
They were making some noise too. But the noise they were making was for a specific person and not for the celebration itself. The Bible tells us that just before Passover, there had been this remarkable thing that had taken place in Bethany, where a man who was once dead was brought back to life. And folks stood around 4 days after his funeral and saw Lazarus come from the grave. And folks were excited about that. The Bible says also that they had a dinner and that there's some folks upset the fact that this dead man used to be was now alive. And there was a crowd wherever he went. In that crowd was a used to be blind man by the name of Bartimaeus, who had been living in Jericho when he heard Jesus come by. And he asked Jesus for his sight, and he got his sight, and he was excited about it. And so in the crowd was yet another crowd of folks that were cheering Jesus on. But along with Jesus and his disciples, something strange happened. Wherever Jesus went, he always walked. Jesus was an humble man.
Come on now.
He didn't require anything special. He was like everybody else. But on this occasion in Jerusalem, he told his disciples to go find me a coat.
Yes, sir.
And when he got on the coat, they were reminded about the fulfillment of a prophecy. That there would come a king, there would come a Messiah, and Jesus allowed them to worship him as this coming king.
Yes.
And as they began to watch Jesus be elevated, they couldn't help themselves. You don't understand. You don't understand. Read Mark 1. And Jesus cleansed the leper. And he said, shh, don't tell anybody.
All right.
You don't understand. He asked Simon Peter, who do people say that I am? He said, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. Jesus says, shh, don't tell anybody.
All right.
They had been frustrated.
Yes, sir.
They couldn't tell nobody what they knew about Jesus, but finally, Jesus says, now, put me on the boat. Now, let me come to the city. And folks began to cheer. Ride on, King Jesus. That was the outside
All
story.
right. Come on.
Folks excited, but they said something else, and unless you look very carefully, you can't understand the tension that was going on. They were saying, here comes the king. In a city occupied by Roman soldiers. They don't hear nothing about no king. Neither do the Sadducees nor the Pharisees.
All right.
Because they had already worked out an arrangement with Rome. That there wouldn't be no rocking the boat. That there wouldn't be no rebels. And all of a sudden, somebody's claiming to be king. Tell them folks to shut up. Because we need some law and order up in here. But Jesus says that if they be quiet, the rocks will cry out. And they saw there was this uncomfortable tension going on as folks were beginning to shout about the arrival of Jesus. Meanwhile, Jesus had then gathered his disciples into this upper room where they could celebrate the Passover. The Passover was still so important to them, they didn't expect anything other than to do what they had been doing for hundreds of years, celebrating the Passover. And John captures a very special scene. That scene shows Jesus taking off his robe, getting at their feet, and beginning to wash their feet.
Yeah.
We can't see it the way they saw it. Everywhere they walked, they were walking in sandals on dusty roads. Roads filled with filth and stuff. The dirtiest part of their bodies was their feet. Either they washed their own feet or they had some woman, some slave just to wash feet. But here was the one they had just elevated, the one they had just celebrated, washing their feet.
Come on. All right.
What's up with this, Jesus? Some of them was apparently was cool. It was all right. But when he got to Simon Peter, he spoke up. Well, what you doing, Jesus? Washing my feet? No, you ain't.
All right.
The show them
Yeah.
that if you're going to be chief amongst folks, you got to lower yourself to serve folks. That the chief leader is a servant. He told Simon Peter, you ain't going to understand this now. And 2,000 years later, we still don't. Can you imagine some of the Bentley driving, horse driving, mega preachers washing anybody's feet other than their own? Can you imagine these big time folk who you can't ever touch because they got armor bearers around you? They don't even shake the hands of their own parishioners. Can you imagine them washing anybody's crusty feet? So don't be so hard on Peter. Because it was just beyond his imagination that the one who's to be king would lower himself to be that of a servant. But there's a lesson that Jesus is trying to teach them and us. He is not about this hierarchy. He is about relationship. He is not about me up there and you down there. Peter couldn't get it at first until Jesus says, if I don't do this for you, you can't have nothing to do with me. I wonder if we can hear that just a little bit. Jesus is saying something about this relationship that if you say no to me, I'm going to say no to you. And in that case, people say, well, not only wash my feet, but my whole head, everything about me. But we need to understand that sometimes we inadvertently say no to the king. We've been running a little experiment. You've all been part of it. The experiment is writing to those behind the wall. This is a simple task, just writing a letter. Because Jesus says, when I was in prison, you visited me. And many of you passed the test. You sent out letters.
All right.
But there's some folk that ain't me all their lives. Christians all their lives. In their spirit said, no, I ain't doing it. And haven't done it yet. I have a question for you. What's up with that? Is there anything theologically wrong with writing a letter to somebody behind the wall? Or is it that we sometimes just get so stuck on ourselves that we just say, I'm saying no. I'm better than that. I ain't doing it. Sometimes we got to be careful when we say it, how we say no. Because Jesus is asking us to go outside of ourselves. It's not just about writing the letter. It's about caring for other folk, to reaching down and reaching out to other folk. When have you said yes? The church needs to make demands of us. Not about how long your dress is or how high your pants are or how you dress, but demands about reaching out and caring for somebody else other than your own. Jesus is trying to teach a lesson then, and we still got to learn it. It's not about us. It's about serving Him. It's about Him. So as Peter was saying no, he was speaking for some of us.
All right.
I ain't calling no names. I've just been informed in my spirit. And I'm stepping on some toes right now. And that we need to understand that this thing is serious about being a follower of Jesus Christ. It's not just about showing up on Sunday. It's just not about how much you praise and how much you sing and what you give in terms of money. It's about your life and how you reach out to others. And whether it's somebody in prison or somebody just down the street that needs a helping hand, are you doing it? Or are you saying no? Yeah, To be a follower of Jesus requires some unusual kind of activity.
Yes.
All right.
And one of them is to say yes to the Lord.
Yes.
Peter finally agreed to say yes. And then there was another lesson that we need to understand. In that room, that upper room, were 12 men who were soon going to disappoint Jesus. Every one of them didn't have the spine to stand up when there's going to be time to stand up. Jesus already knew about Judas, but he also knew about Peter, and he knew about John. He knew about all of them, because when the going was going to get rough, they weren't going to show up. But what Jesus was showing us is that even with his soon-to-be betrayer, he broke bread with him. He was showing us something about what love is all about. Some of us can't even show up in the same church with somebody we can't stand. Some of us would like to leave the city because some folks we don't care about. Jesus is saying, if you're going to follow me, there's a new standard that we need to represent. And that standard is, even when you know somebody has hurt you, you got to be in fellowship with them. He's showing us a whole new way. Oh, look at this thing again. As he was having this fellowship with them, breaking bread with them, he foreknew what was going to happen. But he fed them and served them and fellowship with them anyway. And then when Judas was filled with the devil, he said, go on, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
He could have put him on blast.
Yeah.
He could have said to the other 11, handle this brother. He about to turn me in.
Wow.
He about to get me killed.
All right.
Can't you put your hands on him? Now, Lord, no. Some of us, given the opportunity, Judas would have never got out the room. Your own homie, your own good buddy. He's about to turn me into the popo.
That's right.
But Jesus would not allow that by changing the atmosphere and serving everyone. Then after Judas had left, he said, there's a new command I want to give you. Well, we need to hear the words of Jesus again. Because he was trying to show them and us what it is to be a true Christian. He says, it's by this the world will know that you are my disciples, that you are my followers, by loving one another. It's interesting to note that in all of his ministry, he never took a biography of anybody before he cared for them. He didn't look at their background and say, no, you ain't eligible. No, I don't like your lifestyle. No, I don't like your friends. I don't like who you love. I don't like who you are. Loving folk first.
All right.
See, we don't have the right to withhold our love from anybody.
All right.
Let me say that again. If you say you are a follower of Jesus Christ, he says that we are to love everybody. And there is no asterisk on the scripture. See, we can find that there's no exception. We're to love first. Love everybody. Wouldn't the world be different? If Christians weren't the ones that said, well, I got to decide whether I will love you. Let me see. What's your background? Are you married? You got kids? Oh, you got kids and you ain't married? And you? You got a felony record? And you? You ain't working? And you?
Yes, sir.
The reality is, ain't none of us perfect. Nobody in here. We house was excited about the coming king because they thought they would get the Romans off their neck. The lesson Jesus was teaching them and us is that to follow him is to be a lover of humankind, carer of everybody, forgiver of folk, not one to walk around with your fist balled up or judging folk or hurting folk, but caring for folk, even when you have a reason not to. Peter, Simon, Simon, the devil has asked to sift you like wheat. But I'm praying for you because, brother, you're going to fall. But you're going to get on up again. And when you get on up again, it's be restored to the fellowship. And what he was telling Peter, he's telling all of us. We will get sifted like wheat. Sifted like Peter. There'll be times when we will deny the Christ. Despite what we say right now in this house of prayer, there'll be times in which we will deny him. But he's showing us that he's still praying for us. And that he wants us to be restored in a right relationship. So if you do fall, or when we do fall, get on up again. Get on up again. Because a saint is not a sinner who falls down and gets back up again. We fall down, but we get up. We fall down, but we get up. We fall down, but we get up. For a saint is but a sinner who falls down, gets up again. That's the message. That's the message. None of us are perfect. Jesus is to love us. And want us to love everybody.
Yes, sir.
Forget about the background check. The biographical sketch. The history of somebody else. Love. Because God loved us so much that God gave his only begotten Son. But whosoever believeth on him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
Right on, King Jesus, no man cannot deny me. Right on, King Jesus, right on, no man cannot hinder me. No man cannot hinder me. Right on, King Jesus, no man cannot hinder me. Right on, King Jesus, right on, no man cannot hinder me. No man cannot hinder me. In the great getting up morning, fare you well, fare you well. In the great getting up morning, fare you well, fare you well. Right on, King Jesus, no man can hinder me. Right on, King Jesus, right on, no man cannot hinder me. No man cannot hinder